Welcome to Everything's Relative with Eve Sturgis. This is a podcast that explores the ways that modern DNA testing changes lives. It exposes secrets, it shocks and surprises people, it blows up families. It does so much. You don't even know. Trust me. If you don't believe me, that's fine. You don't need to believe me. You just need to listen to all the people telling their stories here on this podcast with me. I'm Eve Sturgis. Today, I talk with Annie, a wonderful person I consider my friend. I hope she considers me her friend. She's very active in the DNA discovery community. We met last year at the Higher Earth Hope and Healing Retreat, and we got to spend some time together this year again at the Spring Retreat in April. So she's active in the community, and she's also a helpful leader of the DNA support group called Togetherness Heals, NPE only. That is the group. If you listen to my episode with Erin a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, maybe more than a month ago now, that is the group you want to be in if you want to be with really rowdy, fun people. I mean, all the groups are great, but their group is Togetherness Heals, NPE only. And anyway, so I finally got to sit down for some more quality one-on-one time with Annie this summer. This is another one of our special crossover episodes with Lily Wood's podcast called NPE Stories. I don't know if I should really call them crossover episodes or partner episodes or what, like, if you have any idea what to call these pairings, let me know. Pairings? Is it a pairing like cheese and wine? Is that what it is? Anyway, what Lily and I realized a little while ago is that what happens is a lot of people in our world, they discover our podcast at about the same time, and they get very excited and they contact both of us. And then we aren't very fancy and we're not very big, and so we usually respond and say, yeah, of course, like come on our show, like tell your story. And this is great. And we find that these people are sometimes doing like a little circuit tour of all the NPE podcasts, sort of making their rounds to each one and telling their stories, which is fantastic. The more you tell your story, the more people that hear it, the more truth is told, the better it is for everybody. Except that Lily and I feel like we have a lot of overlap of the same listeners. So our episodes sound very similar to people who've listened to the same person, right? So the same person goes on 2 podcasts, tells the same story. It's a little bit repetitive. So Lily and I are trying different ways to mix it up a little bit, and hosting and inviting everyone. We still want everyone to contact us. We're just trying to mix it up and find ways to be creative with it. If you remember, I did it with Laura's episode, which was June 26th, last month. So doing it again, did it with Annie. So this is how it works. If a person has already been on NPE Stories, usually that is the order of things, because my episodes come out slower than Lily's. She seems to be more organized than me. So like what I want to do is expand on the conversation when they come on my episode. So when I talked to Annie about her episode about coming on with me, so the first thing I did was ask if she had talked to Lily. She had. So then I went and listened to her episode over at NPE Stories. You should do that now too if you want the full context of what we talk about today. This is going to be over at NPE Stories is the play-by-play of Annie's actual DNA discovery. Go hear it. Go listen to it at NPE Stories. So we talk about it here too. You won't be totally lost if you don't pair up our episodes. But that one is a more fuller, contentful tale. And whereas today we sort of abridge it a bit, because I wanted to talk about something else a little bit. And I had such a nice time with Annie. She is, I think everyone agrees, a lovely human being. So what I wanted to talk with her about was what it was like for her to experience DNA results that changed who she was as a proud Italian American. And I make a lot of jokes about this in in advertising or writing for the show, marketing for the show, that I'm this is not so much about thinking you're Italian and finding out you're Irish, but that is the joke I make, and that is literally what Annie discovered. So I want to talk to her about it. So come with me. Pour yourself some Chianti. Eat some spaghetti. Everything's relative. So I'm here with Annie. She's an NPE. Um, and so we're trying something new, a little bit new, that Annie and I had talked about, and that Lily Wood of NPE Stories and I had talked about, where we're trying to sort of pair up our episodes. So you were on NPE Stories with Lily Wood, which is another podcast, and you told your story. So we're going to tell it again.
Okay.
A little shortened, like a little bit abbreviated. And then I want to talk to you about some like other elements of it so that people can listen to either one first, but then go and hear like more details at Lily's, or listen to Lily's first and then come over here and listen to the other elements that I want to talk about.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So like many NPEs, well, not like many, but you were interested in genealogy anyway.
Yes.
And you were looking into it. And I guess, so let's see. So if it's okay with you, I'll do some of the, I'll tell your story.
That's fine. That's fine.
Because what the part that I thought was so exciting and interesting when listening to your story with Lily was when you talked about how Ellis Island records became available.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you were so excited. And I was fascinated with Ellis Island growing up and loved like that idea and that history. And
Right.
we had like, I don't know, children's sort of history books or something, I don't know. I was just really fascinated with it. And I come from a family of many generations in California. And then after that, it's like many generations. It's just so we just don't have like an immigration story to me. And
Gotcha.
my family also doesn't have, we don't have immigration in our heritage so much. I mean, we do, but it's like from 1600 or something. Um, and then we also don't, I'm a family, like we don't have a heritage pride in any way. Like we're just sort of Euro mutt. And there was like a lot of talk about being Irish, but that didn't mean anything.
Right.
Whereas for you, the Ellis Island thing directly connects to you because you're like one generation away. Your grandma came over on a boat,
Right.
and you wanted to like research more about being Italian. And your family, what you said in Lily's podcast, like we're very Italian, like we were an
Yeah.
Italian family. Um, so let's pretend I mean I have like some ideas about what being really Italian means.
Okay.
But I want you to tell me what being really Italian meant growing up.
Well, um, my my dad, and so I refer to the man who raised me as my dad.
Uh-huh.
To kind of differentiate. So my dad had four siblings. There were five altogether, and their parents were off the boat, quote
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
unquote, off the boat. I didn't know them. They both died before I was born. But growing up, when the family would get together on holidays and stuff, they would talk about, back in the day, and the whole family, like they were four brothers and married three sisters, and so it was like a very, I don't want to say incestuous, but brothers and sisters marrying, so everybody was kind of double related, I
Oh,
guess.
right. Okay.
And they all lived in a brownstone in the Bronx, and they like three stories of an entire family. They all lived together.
Mm-hmm.
They all grew up together. And my dad was actually the only one who married someone who wasn't Italian.
Oh.
My mom is Irish,
And
and
do you know what?
but we get together. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Do you know what that was? That an issue in the family?
Um, in retrospect, I think it might have been. But I never felt that growing up,
Uh-huh, uh-huh. That's right, yeah.
but I never knew my mom's family. I only I so if someone would ask me, I would say, "Oh, I'm Italian. Oh, and I'm half Irish,"
Right.
because I grew up in an Italian environment.
And
Um,
did your parents speak Italian? I mean,
my
your dad speak
my dad, yeah, they spoke fluent,
and
and so whenever they wanted to talk about stuff that they didn't want the kids to know, they'd all talk Italian.
okay, so there's Bronx, speaking Italian, and then, um, talk to me about food.
Food. Well, there was a lot of, holidays revolved around food.
Mhm.
So we'd go visit my aunts, and both of my aunts had basements. One of them had a pool table, and they would put plywood over the table and a tablecloth, and everybody would sit around the big pool table. And there was, pasta and lasagna and meat, and on holidays we'd start eating at like 1 in the afternoon, and at 8 o'clock at night there was still food. And
That's
you
amazing.
yeah, it was actually a nice environment to grow up in, as far as being like family kind of thing.
Mhm,
um but we didn't you know I didn't I, I kind of always felt like an outsider
mhm.
in that environment. My cousins were, and it was a small family. There were only 7 cousins altogether, including the 3 of us. So, but my cousins' friends were always there. There was always a lot of people around, but they were all much older than me.
Right, you were younger, you're sort of surprised.
Yeah. So like when I became aware, say 5, 6 years old, um, they were all adults. They were
Mhm,
married. So I grew up around a lot of adults,
mhm.
being the only small child in the group of family members. But growing up in that environment, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of, they'd sit around and drink and laugh a lot, talk about, this uncle and that aunt, and doing this. And they grew up in the depression and stuff like that. So I mean, it wasn't a bad environment to grow up in.
Right, right,
But
no, I don't think anyone
I
would.
really just didn't feel like I belonged there.
Mhm,
But I always thought it was an age thing.
sure. Right, and it might have been, like,
It might have been,
it's
yeah.
that's probably part of it, like,
Well, and I also didn't look like any of them.
right, right, and
I didn't look like any of them.
and, that was a like, a hair color thing or just, like, a everything?
Overall coloring.
Mhm,
So they're swarthy Italian. So
mhm,
they're Southern Italian, not Sicilian. But they're, dark skin, dark hair, dark eyes, that kind of thing. And I was always very pale and light. And when I was little, my hair was like gold brown,
mhm,
like
mhm,
really light. My skin, I don't tan, I burn.
right.
And I just looked very different from them.
Yeah, yeah,
And I realized at a young
uh-huh.
age.
Did they talk about that? Did that come up ever?
No,
No,
no.
nobody said.
I mean, if I would ask my mom about stuff, like I always had a lot of freckles when I was
Mhm,
little.
mhm.
Why do I have freckles? Why is my hair light? Why this? Why that? And I like to say, she would invoke dead relatives that nobody knew.
Right, totally.
So it would be, my aunt had this, my father had that, that kind of thing.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean,
So,
I feel like if everybody knew you were half Irish anyway, that it would make
right.
sense that one kid would get just like, "Oh, she just got the lighter genes." Like, it just worked out
Correct. I
that way.
mean, like my brother had green eyes,
Mhm,
beautiful green eyes, very pale skin, but he would tan, and
mhm,
he had black hair. And of the 3 of us, I think I resembled him the most, but not that much.
mhm, mm,
My sister looks totally different from me. I mean,
huh,
you wouldn't, at least I wouldn't think we were siblings
right.
if I didn't know, who she was.
Yeah. It wasn't like an open discussion in my family how I didn't look like anybody.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so now I like, of course now, and of course hindsight is 2020, but I wonder what that was like for my parents. If like
Mm,
uncles and aunts and like people would just all the time like, where did you come from?
yeah.
And
Yeah, yeah.
so, um, So I'm always curious about that. Like, was it a common discussion? My eyebrow, like,
If it wasn't around me.
right, 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 right,
It wasn't. If it wasn't around me.
right. Totally. Cool. Okay. So you're doing this Ellis Island and you get more details. And I love the story of finding out that your grandma came over. She was 9 and she came over with 4 sisters, right?
Yeah.
Like your
Right.
great grandmother brought over 5 girls and
5 little girls. They were
the
all under 13 years
and
old.
the visual of that on
I
an Ellis
know.
Island boat is
I know. I know.
I get goosebumps. I got goosebumps last night. I'm getting it again. Like I don't know, there's something so precious about that and special
Yeah.
um and amazing about determination to get like that whatever was going on there, this was worth the trip,
Right.
right?
Right.
And
Right.
worth risking it. So interesting, so brave of a woman back then.
Yeah. I can't
Um,
even imagine. Really.
right? I
I
mean,
can't even imagine.
um, so then you have this genealogy bug, and then you over time, Ancestry offers you the spit test,
Right.
the famous test,
The
and
famous test.
the famous tube, and and then it comes back that you're not Italian at all.
Right.
And so growing up in a family that was so, I don't know how to like die hard Italian, that
Yeah.
Italian American was such a part of your identity. What was that like for you?
Well, it kind of didn't register really at first. I mean, they literally like emailed me, Ancestry did, about a year before the tests actually came out. And it was basically an offer. Look, we're doing this. You've been a long-time member. Are you interested? We'll let you know when they're available. So I said that I was interested. So I got put on a mailing list. And when they came out, I mean, I ordered it immediately.
Hmm.
Not like I said, the family was small and it was all sisters. It was like there were 5 sisters and 3 brothers, and like there were a lot of girls.
Right.
So my last name was not, it was common, but I could never find any relatives with my
Right.
last name.
Right. And just in
Um,
case anybody's not following that, it's because the women would marry men and their last names would change. So
correct.
so then their children
Correct.
would have
Yeah.
a different
I'm
last name.
sorry.
No. I just feel like might as well catch everybody up just in case
Yeah.
somebody's not following. Like, what does girls have to do
Um,
with it? And it's
right. Right.
last name change.
The last name would change. So anyway, so they sent me the email with the tests were available. I ordered one, spit in the tube, sent it back, and I get it back, and I open it up, and it says something like 98% or 99% Irish.
Hmm.
Well, that's weird, and I'm like, well, must be it's brand new. There's not a lot of people that have taken it. I guess over time it's gonna change.
I would think that too. I would just be like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
So this was in 2012.
They didn't get my dad's stuff in here.
Right, right. They
They
didn't. There
just,
were
yeah.
no Italians have taken the test
Right,
yet. That
right.
must be what it is. I
Hmm.
didn't understand about centimorgans.
Hmm.
I looked at that and I looked at the matches, and I didn't see any names that I recognized. And that was it. So I closed it and I went on with my life. And every once in a while, I get an email. Hey, we match on Ancestry, blah, blah, blah. And it was always like this, like it is now. You get that email and it's like, oh, you have, 23 new relatives, and they're like eighth cousins,
Yeah,
12 times removed,
totally.
So it was kind of like that. But every time I would look at it, it didn't change. And, but I kept doing, the tree and the research, and there were more records and more records and more records. So then in 2015 was the first time someone got in touch with me from my birth father's family.
Right.
So it was 3 years before like a bell went off that something was wrong,
Hmm.
or something was awry. So through in that 3-year period, uh, it never even occurred to me that there was a problem.
Right. You're like, I am still Italian.
Exactly. I
Right.
mean, and it was really my identity in so many ways, because a lot of the kids I went to grade school with, their parents were off the boat.
Hmm.
So like everyone in my immediate circle until I went to high school was Italian. Including my friends.
Mm-hmm.
So so it was a bit of a shock when I did finally realize that this was a problem, that
Right.
there was something wrong.
Right. Right.
So um, I kind of I kind of went the other route after that, and I called Ancestry and
Mm-hmm.
gave them some stern words and things like that, and here I am.
Here you are.
So yeah.
Right. And so you again summarizing what you talked about with Lily. So relatives start contacting you in 2015, and it takes a while for you to start putting not a while, but you start to put together that there goes a motorcycle. Cool. You start to put together that, oh, this means the only way this is all could be possible is if my dad is not my dad.
Correct.
And
And so when I started thinking that, my wife decided to take an ancestry test, and by mistake she ordered two tests. So she took her test.
mistake. Uh-huh.
Yeah, right. So she took her test, and it came back exactly how she thought it would. She's pretty much a mutt. She's German,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Irish, Norwegian, Swedish, like all kinds of stuff. So since we had an extra test, I called my sister and I said, "Look, I think there's a problem, and if I buy a test, would you take it?" And she said she would, and she came back half Irish and half Italian.
Mm-hmm.
So at around the same time, I got the message from this one relative, um, and she said, "Here's my tree. I can't figure out where you fit." So I looked at her tree and I'm like, none of these names mean anything to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like 3,000 strangers
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
on
Mm-hmm.
this tree. And, even though I took the test, my sister took the test, we figured out there was this issue. I just figured this is a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
Unless a sibling takes a test, I'm never gonna know. My mom's been dead since 1994.
Right. Both your parents have passed. There's no one
Right.
to answer questions.
Correct. And so I kind of, just resigned myself to never knowing.
Did you when your sister came back with that test that said that she was half Italian,
Hmm.
which sort of confirmed what you had suspected, did that feel
Right.
like a big shock or a punch in the stomach, or did you feel like you sort of expected that at that point? Remember how that
At
felt?
that point, it was more of just another confirmation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
By the time she took the test and sent it in and got her results, I was already kind of, I had already resigned myself to the fact that the guy that raised me is not my father. And
Right.
I just figured I was going to never get answers to the questions that I had because there
Mm-hmm.
was nobody to ask.
Hmm. How does that feel?
Um, it kind of sucked.
Yeah.
It kind of sucked. I mean, I was mad at my mom,
Mm-hmm.
not for my existence, but because when she was sick, I lived with her for over 3 months. It
Mm.
was just me and her. And she had ample opportunity to tell me.
Right. That would have
And
been a
that's
lovely.
what I was mad at.
Mm-hmm.
And she never did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, I don't know what I would have done with that information in 1994.
Right. Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess it really made no difference.
Right.
We
Right.
we weren't
Would have dialed up your Prodigy internet
right.
and got onto AOL with your CD-ROM, right? Like,
Right, exactly.
uh-huh.
So I kind of, it took me a little while to kind of get past that. I mean, I'm a long timer, so it's kind of hard also to remember things that I was feeling back then.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
A lot of confusion,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of resentment.
Yeah.
The resentment did come back after I did identify my family, because, like I said, I grew up like a tiny adult
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that I could have had like 35 cousins that were all around my
Oh,
age.
that would have been so fun
Yeah.
thinking about that.
So
Yeah.
that still comes up sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That little bit of that fucking sucks. But you know, but then I get another perspective from my wife, who's been incredibly supportive. She said, "Well, what would have happened if you knew then? Do you think that you would have been part of that family? Do you think that he would have divorced his wife and then they would have only had 3 kids instead of 6? That would your mom and dad have gotten divorced? What do you think would have been different?"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when I look at it that way, it's very true. It probably wouldn't have been different, and I still would have been ostracized,
Right.
and and it would have been different, but maybe not in a good way.
Right. And maybe
You
even
know,
more, yeah, even sort of more aggressively ostracized.
right, right,
Right. You'd be this real, you already were a living proof, but this proof of all
right.
this. Yeah.
All this, exactly, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you've connected with with your paternal, your biological, your bio dad's family, and
Right.
they have, except for one sibling, he's a
Yes.
sibling that you've connected with that sort of keeps his distance, but
Well, I wrote a letter.
mm-hmm,
Um, it was probably close to 4 pages, and I sent photos. What happened? Well, let me backtrack a little bit.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So I'm doing all my research, and I now have identified who my father is. There were 3 brothers, and I identified who he was. Um, and my cousins started giving me photos. So I would put photos on my tree.
oh,
So I had,
sorry, I'm
so
going to
that's
back you up. I'm going to back you up. Can you talk about how you had a cousin on that side sort of help conspire to get the answers and what
yes,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
So
so yeah.
so going back to 2015, so she's a first cousin once removed, so she actually turned out to be my birth father's first cousin.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we chatted a little bit about her tree, and I couldn't figure out where I fit. If I ever figure it out, I'll get back to you. So 2 years later, I got a hit that it said first cousin. So I could see that he was on that side, on the paternal side. So I emailed him immediately, and I said, "This is going to seem like a weird question, um, but my results we match as a kind of a high match, and my results are questionable. Can you just tell me if your mom had any brothers?"
Mm-hmm.
So she said, so he emailed me back almost immediately. He said, "Oh yeah, my mom had 2 brothers. They were priests."
Right.
So
Wah,
I'm like, oh,
wah.
wow. So I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, well, first of all, the ages of the priests were much much older than my mom, and we were in a church going people,
Mm-hmm.
so she wouldn't have had priests in her social circle. She did work. She always worked. So we figured out that the cousin, the more recent cousin, Ed, that his mom's sister was married to Shannon's father's brother. So
Right.
I was very easily able to identify my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And so they weren't related at all, but they were in-laws, I guess, cousins-in-law.
Right. 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 Right.
Since there's really no term for that, but they knew each
Right.
other. And so Ed, while we're corresponding back and forth, he said, "Well, um, since we don't know which of the 3 brothers it is," he said, my wife and I actually go to Florida every winter, and we see one of the sisters. Every time when we're there, we visit them a couple of times. He said, "I'll try to bring it up. Like, you get to talking about old times,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I'll see what I could do." So turns out he was too chicken to bring it up with her, but he emailed me and he said, "Look, I don't know how to say this.
It can
He
be an
said,
awkward segue.
right, exactly. So he said, would you mind if I told her daughter? And I said, no, it's fine. So he told her daughter, who was actually an adoptee. So her existence wouldn't help me
Right.
in that way. And we ended up emailing back and forth. And she told her mom, and her mom's first reaction was, that's my brother,
Mm-hmm.
and he's dead, and I don't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because that's the Irish way.
Right.
That's the Irish way. So while my cousin is speaking to me, she's like, I'm trying to get my mom to come around, and we're really just not sure which brother it is. So there was another visit in the meantime, over Easter, and invited to my aunt's house over Easter was the daughter of one of the three brothers who also lived in Florida. So they're all sitting around and they're chit-chatting, and Ed's wife says to Emma, who was the other
Mm-hmm.
person, says, hey, didn't your dad work for IBM? And she said, oh, no, he worked for Sinclair and Valentine. So Ed and his wife knew that that's where my mom worked.
Right. It's such
I had
I
given
love
him
Ed's
all
wife.
this information. Yeah.
Love the idea of
And
Ed's wife sitting there with like,
Ed's wife,
I'm going to figure out how to ask this.
How do I ask this? Oh, didn't he work for? No, he worked here. So
Mm-hmm.
that was how I confirmed that he was actually my birth father, because they worked.
And then they had to sit there for the rest of the meal
and kind of act like nothing.
Right, but they had just solved this major mystery. They solved
it. He said they could, and I had actually met him about a year later, and they were telling me about that day, and he said it was all we could do. We both looked. He said we both looked at each other like this, and like we didn't know what to do. It was like they wanted, like on cartoons where your eyes pop out of your head.
Totally, or like it's like in all the, or like movie, I don't know, it feels like in the movies when towards the end of the movie where the person that's like trying to solve the crime, something like like the fact comes out, and the whole audience is like, the whole audience knows who did it. It's like, it's the same company.
So the person that was there was actually my sister.
Wow. The one who said no, he worked
for Sinclair and Valentine.
That was your sister. Wow.
That was my sister.
Wow.
So after that, I started putting pictures on the tree and everything, and I misidentified someone on the tree, and I got a message. So on Ancestry, if you comment, you can comment on photos. Like if you go, you can, like, if you find a photo that someone posts, you can comment on the photo, and then the person who owns the tree will get a message.
Sure.
So I get a message from this person, Donna, saying, I had misidentified my grandfather and great-grandfather. And so Donna, who was actually turned out to be my brother, that was his wife, sent a message and said, this is not Michael, this is Jack. And so for me to correct the picture. So I took that as an opening.
Yeah.
And so I emailed back and I said, oh, well, thanks very much. I was told that it was this person. And so she emailed me. She said, oh, that was my husband, Mark, was commenting. He was working on his tree. So I crafted a letter, and I redid it, and I edited it, and it probably took me 2 months to put it all together. And I got pictures, and I put it in a FedEx envelope, and I sent it. Someone in our group found his address for me, and I FedExed it to his house. And about 10 days later, he emailed me. And he said, I got your letter. I shared it with my siblings. We've decided that this was something a secret that was kept a long time ago to keep families intact. And at this point in time, we would like to keep it that way. Now, their mother is alive. And right from the beginning, I've been very cognizant of that, And I've told them that. I've told everyone that I've corresponded with that I don't feel that she deserves that kind of pain at this point in her life. So
Yeah. Oh my
if she
gosh. Can
doesn't
you
know,
imagine?
if she doesn't know, she doesn't need to know. And I reiterated that several times. He said, we appreciate your sensitivity in that, and this and that, but uh, we're not ready to correspond. Um, I will be happy to email you back and forth if you have any questions.
That's so
Oh,
interesting. I mean, or sad, or because it's interesting to say like, well, you were a secret. We don't want our mom to know. And there's a million ways that you could go about still having a relationship with you without the mom knowing,
right. Well,
right?
yeah, I
I don't
had actually said that to him because we did meet. He and I did meet in April of 2019. Um, I happen to be in Philadelphia, and he works nearby. He works in Philadelphia. He lives in South Jersey. And I emailed him on a whim while I was there, and I said, do you want to meet for a cup of coffee? And we had emailed a couple of times, but it was always me initiating, and he giving me brief responses. I asked him for medical information. If he could tell me anything about our father. I never referred to him that way. I try to be as respectful as I could with him. And he gave me some information, and I really didn't expect to hear back from him, but he emailed me back and he said, well, where do you want to meet? I said, well, I don't know anything about Philadelphia, so you tell me and I'll just be there. So I didn't sleep all night the night before, and we met in the morning, and we actually had breakfast. And we talked for a couple of hours. We were there for a couple of hours. But that was one thing I did say to him. I said, I know that you don't want her to know, and I don't want her to know, not for me, but for her. And I said, how would she know if you don't tell her? How is she ever going to, you would be the one that would have to tell her. There would literally be no other way for her to find out that I
right.
exist.
Right.
And he kind of was like, whoa, like he never thought of it that way. He
Right.
said,
Like, oh,
but there's a lot of people in the family and people talk and blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, that's fine. And we had a couple of emails after that, and I kind of realized that he was just not going to be the one to initiate anything. I think the last time I emailed him was probably about a year ago. Kind of just checking in, making sure you're okay. You're okay during the pandemic. I hope you're safe. Blah blah blah. And it was just a very brief response from him.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was the last contact I really had with him.
Hmm. And none of the other siblings. No one else has
No.
participated. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Hmm.
And what's funny is Emma. She's the oldest, and I think there's three girls, three boys. One is deceased, and I think what it is they just had him up on a pedestal,
Hmm.
and my appearance really just knocked him off. And I think she's just hurt and disappointed that he would do that. Um, and I'm the I'm the one that is getting the blame.
Right. You're the living reminder of
Right,
the
correct.
imperfections of their
Of
father.
her father, right, of your father. And but what's funny, what I was going to say is that Hira, who is the cousin in Florida, who's been we've actually become very, very close. I just visited her a couple of weeks ago.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. And my aunt, she's just the best. She really is just the best.
I wonder if Kira, because she was adopted, feels a kinship with you in a sort of in a way that like there's a sort of
We
underlying empathy.
we've actually talked about that, and yeah, that's really part of it. She said to me, she's like, I've always known I was adopted. I've never felt like an outcast in the family, she said, but I always knew I didn't really belong to them,
Mm-hmm.
as an adoptee. And she said, and here you are, you do belong to them, but you're not allowed in. They're really your family more than mine if you want to look at it in a biological kind of way.
Right, right.
you know so that, I think that's part of it. I mean, I am in touch with another first cousin who I haven't met yet, but I'm going to over the summer. And we're just it's just the siblings that seem to have the problem.
Right.
Because other people I've spoken to have been just
Mm-hmm.
more than loving and welcoming. And I've met several people in the family since this all started.
Yeah. Oh, good.
So it's really just them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's too much. Too much.
Yeah.
It gets too close to something. Too close to some.
My aunt tells me, well, I think when their mother dies, they'll probably be more open. But when we were down visiting her last month, she actually said to my wife, they're never going to accept her.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Too
I
hard.
don't think she cares for them very much.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I wonder why.
I know. So Kira's daughter got married. She got married right at the start of the pandemic.
Oh,
and,
right.
And Emma was invited to the wedding. She lives down in Florida, and she went. And I asked Kira, I said, when she was there, she never said anything to you, not a single word.
And she knows. She knows that you and Kira are friends.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But didn't say anything about it, huh?
No, not a word, not a word. But she did unfriend and block Ed, the cousin that the cousin that was helping me. She actually unfriended and blocked him on Facebook.
She killed the messenger or something.
But none of them have blocked me on Facebook. So I go to their pages and I stalk them all the time, and I'm totally petty with them. And if they comment on cousins that I'm friends with, I make sure I go there and comment. And I'm like, you're gonna know that I'm here.
Right.
I'm here, and I'm not gonna let you forget about it.
I'm here. There's really something about existing as an NPE, about wanting to say I am here. Right. I am here.
Right. You don't need to be my friend. I managed to live 55 years without knowing you, but you're not going to forget that I exist.
Right. Right. Yeah, and no way to have answers. No way to have answers. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So interesting. So I have the other thing I want to ask you, this is about being Italian. This is what I was thinking about listening to the episode, is that we were just at the retreat together.
Right.
We were at a High Earth Hope and Healing retreat. It was in April. It was so fun. And it's just something totally unique to be with all, you described it as a tribe, and it really feels that way, of just like people that get it.
It's amazing.
And
it's really amazing.
All the different things everybody can talk openly about things without having to explain things. It's just really great. Yeah. But you made dinner one night, and I want to talk about it. You made like a chicken piccata. Is that what it's called?
Chicken Marsala.
Oh, okay. Chicken Marsala.
Chicken Marsala. Piccata is completely different.
Okay. Yeah. See, this is me this perfect. I didn't even plan that to illustrate how much I don't know about Italian cooking. So it was so delicious. And so did you grow up learning did you learn to cook from your family? Do you cook Italian food a lot?
I do. That is actually my specialty.
Chicken Marsala.
Chicken Marsala. I learned, my mom being Irish, learned how to cook from her mother-in-law.
Right. Okay.
Because Irish people tend to have crappy food. To put it bluntly. So my mom was a pretty good cook. I learned watching my aunts, and I just always enjoyed it. Cooking, creating, putting food together, and having people enjoy what I make. So I guess that's my little bit of artistry.
Oh, it was so great.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was really good. And I just think there's something really I don't like either it's special or unique or magical or weird, you know, something about it, about you growing up thinking you're Italian, um, learning that you're not Italian at all,
Mm,
and then connecting with all these other people who have found out that we are not what we thought we were,
right.
whether it's ethnicity or not, you know, whether it's about
Right, right.
heritage or not, but just like all these different versions of that. And then, but you're still using your heritage, like you're still using your raised hair, whatever that's called, our raised heritage, our birth certificate heritage, our
Right, right.
like the way you grew up, you still
It's what I know.
you're using that to bring people together, right?
Yeah,
So there's like
yeah.
it's like this like marriage of things of it
Well,
just
I find food to be a good equalizer.
yeah,
And no matter whether you agree with someone or whether you have an issue with them, it's if you bring food into it, sharing a meal is a good way to have a fellowship
yeah.
with people, regardless of who they are.
Yeah, mealtime is
So
so fun at the retreats, but it was so
yeah,
fun that you sort of had a special dinner night. Is that a recipe that you think we could get from you, or do you have another recipe you
I'd
can
be
share?
happy to share it. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe I can put it
it's
up. I'll
actually not a big deal. I mean, it's not.
it,
It's super easy to make. It
it was
really is. It's super easy to make.
it was fun. It
So
was
yeah, I have no problem sharing that. That's
okay.
fine.
Cool. All right, we're gonna get Annie, the NPE from Bronx's special.
I'll put together an NPE cookbook.
Yeah, I thought of that. I actually thought of that at the retreat when you were cooking. I was like, hey, I wonder if everybody's got a recipe they could contribute to something.
Maybe it's
Um,
something we could look into.
yeah, let's work on that. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Great. Um, and I like to ask this at the end when I remember it. Do you feel like you have any, you're a long timer, but do you feel like you have any advice for people that have just stumbled into the NPE existence?
Yes, I would say don't um, don't rush into anything. Um, Take a breath and do nothing. Um, you're going to be confused, upset, angry, all that kind of stuff. And those are all valid feelings. Um, Seek out people that may be in your same position. I've found the groups more helpful than literally anything else. Because you have different levels of people like me. I'm a long timer. Then you have new people, and the new people need guidance. And what do I do? And how do I approach this? And so you have um, people that know from their own mistakes, like what to tell people not to do. You know, but the main thing I would say is to take a breath and do nothing. Don't start immediately sending messages, and they can be scary for the people that receive them, especially if you get a really close hit. um, if you're going to message someone, be as vague as you possibly can,
Right, right.
just to get them to engage. Because if you start if you start out like, hey, my dad isn't my dad, are you my dad? you
Right.
know People don't want to be the holder of family secrets, and that's unfortunately what we are. We're family secrets. Whether it's one person that knows, or 10 people, or the whole family. um, we were kept secrets for a reason,
Right.
and nobody wants to be the one that knows that information.
Yeah, that's true. It's
you know
interesting because we're like people. We're not the NPEs, but like we're a society that we don't, what am I trying to say? We don't like secrets, like we don't want to have them. And
right.
yet and yet there's like thousands of these people of us
Yeah,
NPEs
right.
walking around, and people uh confirming that or affirming the secret holding.
Yeah,
Like
right.
you don't want it, and you but you're
Well,
willing to do it.
especially, yeah, especially if you this is why I like telling my story, because I if it takes one person that says, wow, I got this email, like from this stranger that says, they might be my cousin or they might be my brother, and wow, that's messed up. And but my friend Annie had that happen to her. So maybe it's not something that I should ignore or send away because it happened to my friend.
Totally. I beg
You know,
people to email,
I
like, just
mean, I
respond to
had,
those emails. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've told my story like with, like I have a Facebook group with my high school class, and I told it in there. And we had a reunion in 2019, and like 3 or 4 people came over to me and just like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Can you tell me more? And why do you tell people? And, because I don't want, I've had doors slammed in my face. And if I could prevent that from happening to somebody else, because you get people that, like, I read, like, especially on like Ancestry's Facebook page, or you get these stories that come up in the news where this person found their unknown sibling, blah blah blah. Oh, nobody should tell that story, keep it to yourself, don't say anything. And they don't take into account that not only are the people like my siblings being handed a surprise, but the surprise, us, we're people too,
Right.
and you can't just say, don't feel that way because this is how I feel,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, and I might not, I'm not looking to get invited over for Thanksgiving, but, don't be an asshole.
Right.
That's all.
That should be
So
a
just don't
motto
be an
somewhere.
asshole.
We don't need to be invited over for Thanksgiving, but don't be an asshole.
Hmm.
That might be in the next tote bag. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's totally true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
really,
I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, I can't complain. I've had a lot more positive results than a lot of people have had. Um, I mean, the family that has embraced me has done so very willingly. They don't need to invite me into their homes, but they have. Um, and if I don't ever see my siblings, I figure it's their loss.
100%.
Yeah.
100% their loss. And they're missing out on your chicken. You you could you could be introducing them to all this Italian cooking,
All this Italian food,
right?
right? I
All they know
know, I
about is
know.
cabbage and boiled ham,
Boiled meat,
right?
boiled meat,
You're all,
boiled meat, potatoes.
yeah. Oh man, they're really losing out. That's too bad. That's so funny. Well, thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Annie,
you.
for coming
Thank you.
and telling your story and talking more about some other sides, because I make a lot of jokes. I mean, I don't, I make a lot of references to how these podcasts or the NPE community is about people that have DNA discoveries or DNA surprises.
Yeah.
And then I always say, I don't mean you think you're Irish and you find out you're Italian. I don't mean
Hmm.
that kind of surprise, but I do.
But
Like,
you
and
do.
I do. I
But in
like,
a way, that's true.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, if had I been, always Irish,
Hmm.
it probably never would have occurred to me why I wasn't getting any matches
Right,
of my family,
right.
you know? I mean, I could have explained away strangers,
Totally,
but
totally.
if I'm not I mean, it's not a mystery that my my dad was Italian,
Hmm.
because I have records of his
Right,
family
right.
coming from Italy. It's not some long ago Mayflower person that just showed up here
Hmm.
from
Hmm.
London.
Hmm.
These people came from Italy, and there are still people in Italy that he's related to.
Yeah,
So when I didn't match any of those people, and it didn't say I was Italian, that was
that was the flag.
a big flag.
Hmm.
Big flag.
Yeah. Well,
You
thank
know.
you for speaking to that for us.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
yeah, and I will get that recipe up as fast as I can, as soon as you
All
send it
right.
to me.
I'll send it
Um,
off.
yeah, and You're gonna go on with your day. It's a Friday. Are you having a good weekend? Going to have a good weekend?
It's supposed to be hot and sunny, so I plan on finishing up my yard um, because we have a barbecue on the 4th of July and watch fireworks and stuff. Our nieces come over and some of their friends, so trying to clean up and put neat solar
Yeah.
lights out and
Oh,
make an
fun.
atmosphere. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
great.
Yeah,
Good.
we got washed out last week, so I didn't get to do any of that.
Oh, okay. So maybe
So
now things will grow.
maybe
Yeah.
now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, have fun.
All right.
All right. I will talk
All
to you
right.
soon.
Talk to you soon. I'll
Thank you
send you
so
that
much.
recipe. Sure. All
Okay.
right. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, everyone. The recipe for Annie's amazing chicken marsala is up on my Instagram now. Go now at Everything's Relative Podcast. If you aren't already a part of Togetherness Heals and PE Only, the support group, get on Facebook, get over there. It's so much fun. And buy some chicken. Make this dish. I should have asked Annie about wine pairings, speaking of pairings, and how to do the rest of it, how a whole meal would go. Caesar salad, I presume. I am the worst about Italian food. I just know the bare bones American basics. I I just had this memory. Oh my gosh. I told once, hold on, let me organize my thoughts. I told a man on a date. I was on a date with a man and I told him I wasn't that into Italian food and he got up and walked out. And then he came back, but the message was clear. And that's fine because Kalen is my husband now and he never asks me about food I like or didn't like. we, for the record, like Italian food, but we don't judge one another for our preferences. Thanks for coming along, everyone. To stay in touch, please follow me on all the socials at Everything's Relative Podcast. If you want to share your story on my podcast or you have comments or questions, contact me. There are a million ways to do that. Email is one of them, eve@everythingsrelativepodcast.com. And if you're feeling so inspired by this experience with me today that you would like to support this project in other ways, we would love your support on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Or if you want less commitment, ask me for a tote bag. Just send me a message and ask me for one, and I'll send one. And I'll just ask you for the cost of shipping. That's it. You don't even have to buy the bag. You just have to buy the transportation. I don't know how long that deal's gonna last, guys. Come get a bag. Either way, I will be back in 7 days with another episode of Everything's Relative. And until then, everyone, please keep sharing your truths, washing your hands, and eating all the watermelon on these hot, hot summer days. Bye-bye.
Everything's Relative with Eve Sturgis is produced by Kaylin Egan and Eve Sturgis. Eve is a licensed therapist in the state of California, but conversations on this podcast are not therapy sessions. This podcast is edited by Stephanie DeLon-Zick, the logo design is by Ivy McNally, and the music is used with permission by Goodbye the Band.
1,000,000 Musicals presents
This is the story of Nellie, who nobody knew.
a brand new musical full of magic and adventure.
I'm gonna cross the purple dragon sea and find somewhere a home for me.
Featuring 15 original songs and a stellar cast from across Broadway, film, and television.
Miracle Bear Melody be gone. Miracle Bear Melody be
The Ballad of Nellie, who nobody knew. Now available wherever you get your podcasts.
melody be gone.
Campfire.